Hi guys, so I wanted to get on here and talk about something very important, and that is searching the scriptures. So I find that it's better to teach a man how to fish than it is just to give him a fish, right? Because it's better to teach him how to fish instead of relying on you every time to be given that fish, right? So here in Acts 17:11, it's talking about like the Bereans, how they received the word with all readiness and searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so. So basically, they were like here in 2 Timothy 2:15, they were rightly dividing the word of truth. So here in 2 Timothy 2:15, be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So, I mean, we are to, ourselves, when you go to church and, you get your sermon and you open the Word of God, you should still go home and just, study for yourself. It's nourishment to our soul, it's spiritual bread, and it's so very important. Okay, now, I wanted to start little Bible studies on different doctrines. The Word of God talks about how and the time would come when people would start, taking heed to doctrines of demons. Now, so what's a doctrine of demon? Basically, or false doctrine. So any doctrine that's not biblically sound. So, I mean, how do you come to the conclusion to sound doctrine? Well, I mean, there's so many doctrine out there. I mean, there's so many doctrine on the state of the dead, on hellfire, the Sabbath, and so many more. There's just so many differing, conflicting views on this. And why is that? I believe that, that there's sound biblical conclusion to these doctrines. That, what was it that the apostles, what was the doctrine that they adhered to? Okay, so this is the best way to do this, to come to this sound biblical doctrine, is basically to, you want to take you need, basically just get context. You need context. You need the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? Now, on the Mount of Transfiguration, we have Jesus, and then we have who like transforms himself into, in all of his glory. And then when he's doing that, so he's in the middle, and then you have Moses and Elijah on both sides of him, right? So you have Jesus in the middle, and then you have Moses on one side, and then you have Elijah on the other. Now, this is like the ultimate endorsement on the law and the prophets. Now, the Word of God, before it was called the Bible, it was called the Law and the Prophets. That's what it's, the original name for the Bible is the Law and the Prophets. So here we have it, Jesus in the middle, who is the Word incarnate, and then you have Moses, who represents the law, and then you have Elijah, who represents the prophets. So Jesus is giving us an ultimate endorsement of the law and the prophets in him, so the Word of God. So we need to come to sound biblical conclusion, doctrine. We need the Old Testament and the New Testament. Okay, so Jesus says, the Word of God says that by two or three shall every truth be established. So there you have it. Jesus, Moses, Elijah. Jesus, the Word incarnate. Moses, the law. Elijah, the prophets. And then you go back to Matthew, where it talks about, do not think that I came to change or do away with the law, but I came to, fulfill. Okay, so the law and the prophets. And that's in Matthew, the New Testament. So even God is telling you, Jesus is telling you, I do not think that I came to do away, but I came to fulfill. For not one jot or tittle shall be done away with until all things be fulfilled. Okay, so I wanted to start on the Sabbath. I believe this is one, I mean, they're all important, but this one takes you back to creation, and it takes you back to the Creator. How do we know, it's because of the Sabbath that we know, our origins, right? I believe that if the Sabbath was kept from the beginning of time until now, there would be no evolutionary theory. But it's because of this that we have the evolutionary theory. Okay, so anyways, God, he made the heavens and the earth and all that was within, and then on the sixth day he rested, or the seventh day, excuse me. On the sixth day he made Adam and Eve, man, and then on the seventh day he rested. So the Sabbath is, a memorial of creation. Okay, so when you're trying to come to sound biblical doctrine, and I mean, like I said, there's so many different like doctrine out there, like viewpoints and conclusions. And I mean, one church may believe this way, and then one church may believe this way. But I mean, we can't all be right, and we can't all be wrong, right? So, this is the best way to go about this. You want to get out a Strong's Concordance, right? Or you can go online. I like going on BibleGateway.com. It's easier for me. Okay. So you can type in, just say Sabbath, right? And then search. And like I always say, I believe it's best to stick with New King James or King James, preferably King James. I was just lazy and I didn't change that. And this is why, because I had to go through looking for it. Okay, this is going to be fine right now. Okay, so anyways, so just look up Sabbath, right? Your search term. And then you're going to find that there's 155 search terms that will come up. If you go over here, there's in the Old Testament 96 times that you can find it in the Old Testament, and then you can find the word Sabbath 59 times in the New Testament. So obviously it's a very important subject, right? Okay, so the first time, now in Genesis it doesn't say Sabbath, it says just seventh day, but I'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so so what you want to do, and it is time consuming, but at least you're going to get to sound biblical doctrine. But I'm just going to kind of bring it all together a little bit quicker, and then you can do this if you want to and just go really feast on this and go into it. Okay. So Exodus 28, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Why? Because God created everything, the heavens and the earth and us. Now, 2, in this commandment, it's saying, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it shall you do no work, nor you, your son, your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who's within your gates. Okay, so there's some conclusions that people come to thinking that the Sabbath is just for the Jews. Now, if you think about it, the Sabbath was instituted in the Garden of Eden, right? In creation week. And Adam and Eve were not Jews. It was made for man, right? Okay, now 2, you go, and Adam and Eve were not Jews. Okay, so you go right here. And then it's talking about how also you shall not do any work, nor your son, your daughter, nor your servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Okay, so it's not just for the Jews. Why do we keep it? For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is within them, and then rested the seventh day. Therefore the God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, or sanctified it. So, I mean, likewise, on the 6th day he made Adam and Eve, and then he joined them into marriage, and God is the one who sanctifies marriage, right? He's the one who makes marriage holy. Just likewise, he sanctifies and makes the seventh day holy. Something to think about on that. So here's another reason why we keep the Sabbath. Speak also unto the children of Israel, saying, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign before me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Okay, so again, like I just made the point, it's not just for the Jews or the Israelites. So why is he saying to the children of Israel? Why isn't he saying to just man? Well, if you think about it, like when after the Jews rejected Jesus, he basically divorced them, and then he extended it to the Gentiles, right? So we went from literal Israel to spiritual Israel. Now, to clarify this even more, the first time the name Israel was given was to Jacob, who was not an Israelite. That was the first time. You can look in the Bible and here, and you will see the first time the name Israel was ever given is to Jacob. The angel said, your name shall no longer be Jacob but Israel, because you have overcome. it's basically like a struggle against the flesh, the sin, like overcoming sin. Okay, so here is the basically the Old Testament. Okay, so now we're going to go into the New Testament. Now, something to think about too is for something to be considered to be within the new covenant. So you'll hear people say that they keep Sunday the first day because it's it's because of the new covenant. Well, there's never a thus saith the Lord stating that we are to keep the first day of the week, not one place. Now, too, for this to have been, there would have to be a thus saith the Lord, and it would have had to have happened before Jesus died, because anything that has to be, constituted of the new covenant has to be before Jesus died, not after. And yes, I understand that, Christians keep the Sunday the first day because of the resurrection, but that's still, doctrines and commandments of men. That's not a thus saith the Lord. Now you go into Matthew, the New Testament, because you'll hear some people say, well, I'm a New Testament Christian. Okay, but in the New Testament, Matthew, the very, very first book of the New Testament, it still talks about the Sabbath. Now, right here, Matthew 24:20, and pray ye that your flight not be in the winter nor the Sabbath day. Now, this is like prophesying about the destruction of Jerusalem, right? And that didn't happen until 60, I believe it was 60 AD, so like 60 years after Christ's death. And then right here, Matthew 28:1, talking about the resurrection. Now, after the first day of the week, Sunday, Mary went down to the tomb on the Sabbath as the first day of the week began to dawn after the Sabbath. So she's going down there on the first day of the week. So Sabbath is Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. Okay, so they took Jesus' body down on Friday right before the sun set, before the Sabbath. And then Mary goes into the tomb after the Sabbath on the first day of the week began to dawn. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. So as we see, there's plenty of, mentions the Sabbath in the New Testament. Okay, so this right here, just if you want to get, I recommend that you do dive into this and it is time consuming, but even if it takes you a little bit at a time, and I just gave you like a rough little juiced, context and, to come to this conclusion. And, but I really do recommend that you go through all of this. Just make it a study to, maybe instead of doing a morning devotional, just do this and do, say, the Old Testament one day, or however long you want to, break it up into, if you want to just go about, just spend a week doing it, or just a day, whatever. So anyways, my conclusion that I have come to is that the Sabbath is still, the 7th-day Sabbath, Saturday, and that there's nowhere in the Bible that, gives it thus saith the Lord for Sunday. But this next video that I do, it will explain, so if the Sabbath wasn't changed, who changed it, and why did that even come about? And so I will go into that into this next video. Alright guys, I hope that this has helped you, and alright, thank you guys.